Till a few days ago, most of us had probably never even heard of the Strategic National Stockpile. Today, this critical reserve of medical supplies, things like desperately needed masks and ventilators, is close to depletion. It's a federal stockpile, but it's designed to be distributed to states in a public health emergency. That's why this comment from Jared Kushner, President Trump's son-in-law and senior advisor, is getting a lot of backlash.
You have instances where in cities they're running out, but the state still has a stockpile. And the notion of the federal stockpile was it's supposed to be our stockpile. It's not supposed to be state stockpiles that they then use. So we're encouraging the states to make sure that they're assessing the needs, they're getting the data from their local situations, and then trying to fill it with the supplies that we've given them.
Senator Bernie Sanders joins me now. A lot to discuss, Senator Sanders, but when you hear Jared Kushner talk about our stockpile, I'm not sure who he's referring to when he says our, because isn't the point of the federal stockpile, the federal resources, to be used by the American people, by states in an emergency?
Anderson, I thought this was the United States of America, and I thought we were all in it together, and I thought that the function of the reserve there is to distribute it to the states and the cities that need it in an emergency. So I think that's kind of an absurd situation. But right now, above and beyond that, we are looking at a massive crisis in terms of medical providers not having the masks that they need, the gloves they need, the gowns that they need. And in fact, what's happening right now, I think in New York and other places, they don't have the medicine they need, the drugs they need to treat people with the coronavirus. So to my mind, what this president has got to do is utilize the Defense Production Act in a way that has never been used before, and tell manufacturers right now that we need billions, not millions, billions of masks. We need gloves, we need the gowns, we need all of the equipment that our medical providers desperately need if they're going to save their own lives and be able to continue to treat us. And tell the pharmaceutical industry that right now this is not a time just to worry about their profits. This is a time to make sure that they are producing the drugs that hospitals and doctors need to take care of patients with the coronavirus.
Is it time for the nation to be put on a federal stay-at-home order? I mean, there are still a number of states out there governors have not issued statewide stay-at-home orders, even though, I mean, every scientist I have talked to, Bill Gates, Anthony Fauci interviewed him just the other day. They all say this is what the United States needs to do to help flatten the curve. And the White House acknowledges we're not seeing the curve being flattened yet.
Well, the answer is I agree. It is incomprehensible to me that we have governors who continue to think that, continue to do business as usual rather than issue stay-at-home orders. And if they are not able to do that, then the federal government should do it. But I think most importantly, Anderson, what we as a nation have got to come to grips with right now is that not only in our lifetimes, but in the modern history of this country, there has never, ever been a moment like this. We're dealing with two simultaneous crises, that is the coronavirus pandemic and the economic meltdown. As you are well aware, and CNN has done a good job reporting this, in the last 2 weeks, 10 million Americans have filed for unemployment claims, and that's by no means all of the people who have lost their jobs. So what I'm working on right now, and I think what we have got to do as a country, is to develop new legislation, unprecedented in its scope, to address the health crisis that we're facing and to address the economic crisis that we are now facing. And in my view, what that legislation, I'm sorry, go ahead.
No. I mean, we were talking about a new stimulus bill, and you've said that you want to guarantee paychecks for every American worker who's lost their jobs. I know Mitch McConnell and other Republicans are saying, well, you know what, let's wait. Let's wait a couple of weeks. Let's wait 30 days to see how the other stimulus thing, how that plays out, which is slow to actually be felt by people. And then let's talk about more stimulus. You say the time is now.
But that's exactly, it's funny that you say that because that's exactly what some of these Republican governors in the South are saying about the pandemic. Well, let's wait and see whether we get it under control. We don't need to keep people in their homes and have of the social distancing that we need. We cannot wait and see. What we are looking at is a loss of jobs that is unprecedented in the United States of America. Never happened before. This is worse than the Great Depression. And we have got to act now because as we speak, Anderson, there are people watching this program right now who have no food in the pantry, who are worried about how they're going to feed their kids, who don't have any money to pay their rent, to pay their mortgages, to pay their student debt. We are facing and we got to deal with it. We just cannot say, well, let's wait and see. I voted for the last package, and I hope that the Trump administration will be able to get that money out as quickly as possible. And if they do, it will do a lot of good. But it is not enough. Given the nature of this crisis, we need to do what other countries around the world are doing. And what we did in this last bill for the airline industry is say to every worker in America, you know what? You're not getting paid now, but you are going to remain on the payroll of your company because the federal government, at least for the next 6 months, is going to be covering the cost. Think about what that will mean in terms of easing.
We'll take a quick break. We'll try to get the senator back. We just lost connection. We'll be right back. We are back with Senator Bernie Sanders. We had a technical problem before. Senator Sanders, thanks for sticking around with us. We're talking about the next stimulus bill, which you want to have it get going as quickly as possible. Talk just kind of an overview of what you want to see in that bill.
I think the main point that I want to make, and I don't think it's being made enough emphasis, is that we have an unprecedented crisis. That's what we have right now. Nobody's fault, but that's what it is. That's the pandemic, and that is the economic meltdown. And we have to respond to that. And the main point that I would make is that it's easier to preserve the economy than it is to rebuild the economy after it collapses. So again, I believe that every American worker should be able to continue receiving the paycheck that he or she was receiving, and that when this thing is over, and it will be over, businesses can resume with the workforce that is ready to go. The other thing, when we look at what's happening today, is when millions of people are losing their jobs, they're also losing their health care, their private insurance. And this is on top of the 87 million who are uninsured or underinsured before the crisis. So in my view, I'm not going to fight right now for Medicare for all. Everybody knows that's what I believe. And that's what we need to move to. But right now, in the midst of the crisis, the least that we can do is expand Medicare to make sure that everybody in America has the health care that they need right now without out-of-pocket expenses, can afford the prescription drugs that they need. For example, it is just totally absurd that the last stimulus bill said the government will pay for a test to see whether you have the coronavirus, but if you end up in the hospital with the virus and run up a bill of thousands and thousands of dollars, you're on your own. So we need to expand Medicare to cover all of the people in this country so there is no out-of-pocket expenses. Ironically, this is exactly what Trump was talking about yesterday. I mean, maybe he was listening to what I was saying. Whether he means it or not remains to be seen. But that is exactly what we should must do. The other point that I would make, Anderson, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Well, I'm just wondering, when do you actually see this stimulus, this next stimulus, I guess the fourth, the stage 4 they're talking about, when do you actually see it getting debated, passing?
I think literally as quickly as we can. I think there is going to be, I'm going to be on a conference call with Democratic senators at 4:15, I think. It's an issue that some of us will be raising. And I think, I understand, McConnell will be resistant to this and all that stuff. Trump will be resistant. But I think it will dawn on them, on any person in America.
Do you have a
given
price tag
the
on it?
nature of the crises, it's going to be expensive. It is going to be expensive to guarantee a continuation of a paycheck for unemployed workers. Obviously, depending on how many workers are unemployed, and nobody knows what the case will be in a month, you're probably talking about $500, $600, $700 billion for a 6-month period. But that is less expensive than allowing the economy to disintegrate, or creating a situation where people have no money and they can't pay their rent, and they can't pay their mortgages, and they can't pay their auto loans, and so forth and so on. Because then you have a ripple effect, which also puts a lot of pressure on the banking system, and we certainly don't want to see another collapse of the banking system. Expensive, yes. In the long run, I think it's the best that we can do.
Now, this probably is not even on the top of your mind right now, but I do want to ask you about the Democratic convention. They say it's now moved to August. There are certainly medical professionals who question, the idea of holding a convention at all in the summer. I'm wondering what you make of that.
God only knows. I mean, we are in a moment where there is very little understanding of where we're going to be from a coronavirus perspective a month from now, 2 months from now, 4 months from now. I suspect that there is thinking on the part of the DNC, and I would suspect in the Republican Party as well, that maybe you're not going to bring thousands of people together in an arena. That you're going to have to do it via, in a digital way, via internet. But we will see. And that raises even, the question about how you have an election in November if this thing goes on, which to my mind means we have to appropriate money to the states for paper ballots so that people will be able to participate if the emergency continues to then and people can't go into a polling place.
Can you imagine a scenario in which an election does not take place? Is that even a possibility? I mean, even in the midst of wars, elections have taken place.
Took place in the midst of the Civil War in 1864, and certainly World War I and World War II. No, we are a democracy. We cannot give up our democracy, and we have got to have an election. But what is imperative is that we look at all of the scenarios, including the worst-case scenario, and that is that, God forbid, this pandemic extends month after month after month, and people are unable to vote in the normal way, go to their polling station. And that means that we have to vote by paper ballot, and that means allocating the resources to the states to make sure that every state in this country has the paper ballots available to make sure that all of us can vote.
And the obvious question, which I know maybe seems, even, I don't know, compared to all the else people are dealing with, not as important, but it's certainly important to a lot of people who support you. Does this change your calculus in terms of you staying in the race, how you see the race?
Well, of course, it changes everything. Right now, in the normal times, I wouldn't be talking to you from my home. We'd probably be having rallies in communities all over Wisconsin, and we would be preparing for the other states whose primaries are coming up. But here I am kind of in my own home. So, yes, the calculus has absolutely changed, and, we're talking to a lot of people and trying to figure out the best way forward.
Senator Sanders, I appreciate your time.
Thank you very much, James.
Take care.